And who's gonna come to save you, Junior? I told you! Don't call me Junior.
Okay, we are here for Spitball episode 2, and we are here with Josh Parks and Tony Lyons, who have been veteran guests on the show. You guys can check out their website, Compositing Pro. Everybody has the word compositing in front of their website. Compositing Pro. This is Josh's website, which he offers master courses and training, and also Tony Lyons' website, which is compositingmentor.com. So today we're going to be discussing just what makes a mid-artist in sort of a discussion of why is it that studios really, in general, not always, want to have a mid-artist as opposed to a junior. So one of the things we also are going to discuss is just the problems with compositing online and so forth, or trying to learn compositing online versus even in class, or so there's this. What I saw was a problem, and I thought we'd make it into a discussion where it's like, how do we get somebody to a mid-level comper, and how do we take the online training to the next level, so to speak? So the problems with learning compositing online: small window professional mentorship, the tutorials are too short, low complexity. If you've seen some of your comps, which we've kind of teased a little bit, they're pretty crazy. And then the plates are low production value and lighting. Anything you guys want to share with that, or problems that you see with learning compositing online, or?
What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lack of resources for practicing on, I would say. So you either have to, most of the time that I've seen, you have to like use a QuickTime or something, which like, you can't really match grain to a QuickTime or something, or you get like 1 frame or 10 frames or something. That has to do with like the size of the footage, but it's a particular problem with CG renders, where basically they give you like, okay, here's a beauty and a light group or something, and it's like the simple, but like in production we get like lots of different types of render passes and everything, and you just don't see that much of that, and you don't see like characters and all these kind of normal things. There's a true lack of that kind of material out there. I would agree with that.
I think the QuickTime one's a big one as well. Like it's very hard to match grain when you're trying to match compression. Like that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
And
or key on
black,
compression.
Exactly. And black, like it's just not even worth it, if I'm honest with you. I really don't think it is. And like, yeah, chromatic aberration and all sorts of lens effects. For me personally, I'm not sure about the tutorials are too short. I don't know what kind of, obviously too short is a number that's different to each of us. Like I would say, actually, in my experience, like an 8-hour tutorial is way too long. Like no one's going to sit there and watch that. And actually it shouldn't take that long to teach. I would say you're either dragging it out because people like buying an 8-hour course and they like spending more money on an 8-hour course. And that's what I see most of the time. It's just someone trying to find a button and they've forgotten where it is and they're talking around the subject. So I actually think in the industry and this is why Tony's like courses are so popular, right? And same with you, Matt. Like you did the dash grain one. Okay, this is how you actually use the node. Bang, 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 and you're done. Which is what I think. Not enough people make tutorials that are more kind of like reference videos, right? Okay, wow, I haven't done a key for a little bit because I've been on a full CG show. So how do let me get up to speed as quick as I possibly can in that respect? And I think there's not enough. Too many videos think that they are good tutorials because they're long and not actually because they're making good use of the time. It's like thinking that a meal's going to taste better because it's taken 8 hours to cook rather than an hour. It's just not. It's the same logic. So that I think is I'm not sure about that point personally, but
yeah, I think it can be long, it can be short depending on the video. Mine are notoriously long, so I
but you also got information. You also got like information at every point. You're not talking around the subject.
I tried to divide them up as much as I could, like in sections of the video, and then in the video you can go to timestamps, and like so nobody's wasting their time to search through. Like if it was just a 10-hour long video, of course it would be crazy. But yeah, I think as far as the complexity part is probably really important. I see a lot of like 101 courses. There's like a million 101 courses, but to go from a mid to a senior or beyond. Stuff like that Comp Layer is doing is pretty cool, where he's teaching some stuff to be supervisor roles and stuff. So it's like really complex compositing and leading teams and stuff. Like that's really rare. So what he there's a market, or there's a thirst for that. And I think there's probably not enough stuff like that out there. So I would agree with the complexity part of it. Yeah.
But I would say as well that actually, I think most people want the complexity too early when they're learning Nuke.
Yeah.
Like way too many people, people want to learn how to grade CG AOVs, and actually they don't even need the AOVs yet because they can't even match the black levels. Like you should be able to just use, I always like to talk about that kind of stuff in regards to kind of like sculpting a person. Most people, what they want to do when they're starting is they're trying to sculpt a person by, I'm going to make the big toe look amazing, and then I'm going to move on to another toe. But actually you want to rough out all the proportions first. So just take your CG, unpromote, grade node, premult, and match the contrast levels and the color and the black levels, etc. And then that's when you do the AOV, when you get all these small little changes. I feel like too many, and in my experience with all my teaching, that's actually the issue. A lot of people don't understand the basic math that happens in most stuff, so they can't problem solve. They understand they should unpremult and premult, but don't understand why. They don't know why an alpha shouldn't be over 1. And actually, if you spend more of your time doing the fundamentals, when you're doing the complex stuff, it would allow you to understand it fully. Whereas if you're doing the complex stuff, the problem you get is you only ever see it as like, this is the only way to do this. But if you really understand what's happening on the hood, you can break it apart and know when to use this and when not to use it, because there's nuances, right? So for instance, on Blade Runner, which you're going to be looking at by the sounds of it, there might be kind of different, they might have tackled the same problem in different ways in different shots, right? Which is very interesting. And that's kind of, I think, coming to the junior mid-level discussion that we're going to have in a little bit, that's kind of where that comes. And mid to senior is another one where it's like, okay, I'm going to use this technique because I'm not just saying I'm going to use this technique because Matt or Tony taught me it on YouTube. It's knowing the reason why.
Yeah, I completely agree with Josh there. Like, I remember when I picked up Steve Wright's book, the Art and Science of Digital Compositing. I was just starting. You have one book that was, I can't remember the name, Ron Brinkman, right? And
yeah.
He has that, I forget the name of it. What was it called?
I think it might be the Art of Digital Compositing, that one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of them's the Art and Science of Digital Compositing. The other one's production or something. But one of them is really easy to digest, and it's really like, it lays all out, the thicker one. And then you have Steve Wright's book, which is amazing, but it's like super technical. And when you're just starting out, I remember reading that. I had no idea. Like I was like, am I stupid or something? It was just because you're not ready. Like you're not ready for it yet. You need, as Josh said, you need the basics first before you can really dive into doing really complicated stuff. And so there's different levels, like when you're ready for something, which is a good part of a tutorial is that you can return to it, and you probably that's a sign of a good tutorial is when you can return to it and gain something else from it at a later stage, maybe. So
actually, funny enough you say it, because there's that deep Weta thing, right, with the Planet of the Apes. And I remember watching that at uni. It was ages ago. Weta did this, like, oh, we're using deep Planet. And I remember watching you, it was like, this is cool. I don't really understand what's happening. And it's so satisfying. Like when I finally understood it and I'd used deep properly, and it was like, wow, okay, now I'm watching it and I understand what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting one in that respect.
I've revisited that tutorial many times. The one where on the bridge. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
I love
now
just
the
watching
founders
that.
got rid of the deep holdout mode, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, okay, so segmentation, if it's a long tutorial and keeping it in, chunks that people can swallow and digest, I mean, is that a possible? Because I still think there is purpose in a long term, but making it like pieces. And one of the things that I haven't discussed yet, we discussed it, but I mean, for the audience, is the idea of creating a series through this channel that's free for access to download, but every single episode is one more iteration of the process of a shot in just segments like that. One would deal with color matching, one would deal with the lens flare type, so it would just be like, okay, we're going to talk to this expert, this compositor who's now working their butt off on a major motion picture, but they have a little time to spare on Saturday afternoons. take a look at the comp, they can physically open it and start organizing it maybe a little bit before the show, and saying this is how you should be laying this out. And it's like a corrective process, and the iterations are free for you to download online. It's not just one file you download off say my site, but the iteration is the next week and the next week and the next week. Does that sound like a plan? Or
Yeah, it's like a mini production. It's like a simulating a production on the side or something. It's a good idea. And yeah, like as you said, you probably want to segment it out. So like, okay, this is how you set up a simple track for the shot. Okay, this is how you integrate CG. This is how you do your prep, and then match grain and post effects and this kind of stuff. But break them all out into relevant sections, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that if you're in the industry working on a project and you're starting out, you want a different tutorial. Like I think the referencing thing that me and Tony were talking about earlier, where you can just find what you need to know in it, is very good when you've got a project and it's like, wow, I just need to get up to speed quickly. But the problem with that is the fact that you're never seeing it in regards to the whole picture, right? So if you just Google how to do chromatic aberration in Nuke, you never see it in the part of the process that fits in, which is again is something that I think that would offer. You'd actually see the natural progression. Actually, oh crap, you know what? Now we need to go back to what we did before because we've changed our mind on that bit. I mean, that's the only thing you can't emulate, the fact that the client's going to go, oh, actually, you know what, Matt? We liked it 2 months ago. So now go back to that one. But I mean, I think it's good to see things in context, which is, I guess, you miss when you're just watching a tutorial of like dash grain, for instance. It's like, okay, well, where does that fit in the whole process?
Yeah.
It's a cool idea.
So I brought up some possible solutions, long and boring tutorials, obviously, in some form of segmented workflow. But the idea of a oneers, I was teaching a class at Columbia in Chicago, and we took a commercial, one of those typical commercials where they show multiple layers flying through the scenes. It was actually an After Effects class. But we did this one shot for the entire class, and we replicated everything from that original shot, and they learned so much more. And it was like a digital readout that would have a sub-menu and all this and all these holograms moving around. And the kids loved it. I thought, well, that's something that makes more sense, that instead of going out and just thinking, well, what if we just shoot a VFX shot plate here in Indiana? Why don't we look for something, whether fully CG or just color, a simple hair fix thing like in Outlaw Kings, which is not simple, obviously, but where we take something and we go, here's the shot, here's some of the artists that actually worked on that shot. We've replicated that problem, and then we made it into this shot that we can reference back with people that actually have dealt with this issue before. And again, it's going to be hard to choose which shot to do it. And then just hopefully in the future, moderate tutorials that are prep, paint, splits, cleanup, rotos, and retimes. I'm working in more. I'm about to work on more Netflix features this summer, but right now I'm working on films, and it's from a small VFX house that is doing such things as splits, cleanup, rotos, television stuff. So how important is that? And do people necessarily have to get into that kind of stuff ahead of time, or do they just, can they skip the sort of television-y type splits? And how did you guys do any splits back in the day, or no?
What do you mean by splits? Sorry, you mean?
Well, what I'll do in some shots is there'll be a performance on the left and a performance on the right from two different takes, but you're obviously moving, so you have to stabilize one, track the or motion capture the other one, move them together, and then you work on the edges of the frame.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever that's called.
Constantly doing it. Yeah, it's splits. Yeah, I was just making sure we were on the same page with the terminology.
Okay.
But yeah, we do that a lot. Like they're like, oh, we don't like this actor or actress performance. Grab them from the take 3 and put it in there, and then that goes along with the retimes and all this stuff. And there's been a lot more sort of like retiming of. It's not even retiming. It's called a fluid morph in editorials, where they're sort of doing like this crazy blending with OFlow or Chronos or something, and it's starting to get really complicated. Some of the stuff that they're sort of they do a rough version and they're happy with, and then they sort of want you to replicate it, and it can be really complicated. Like maybe they just want to replace the face. They like the person's like actions, but they don't like their facial expressions. Oh, can you like retime the face only? And so they get really complicated sometimes with their stuff. So it's pretty important to know how to tackle it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a recent shot, right? Actually on a show where they wanted to retime the fight because they're to make it more kind of exciting in certain areas, but retime certain parts of them kicking or something. So like just the leg retimes to make that feel quicker, and it can get really nuts. Yeah, it can get really nuts, all of that stuff.
And then you got to clean up the artifacts of the Chronos O-Flow.
Yeah, but that depends. So if it's a whole shot, then what happens is that would generally get, I mean, this is the nice thing, right? When that would generally get outsourced, if I'm honest with you. So when I was back at NPC in the Roto prep department, the comper would do the retime, and then we'd have to paint out all of the artifacts. So yeah, but yeah, you do have to fix the artifacts.
I was on NPC during Fast and Furious 7 in Vancouver, and I think my entire job was painting out artifacts because they retimed all of the plates, and it was the scene where they're going through the streets of London at night, and like they're passing by all these lampposts and stuff, and the Chronos would just explode every time a lamppost would go by. Yeah. And it would turn into like the most creative, like lightning looking crap on the screen, and we would just have to like paint it out. And I learned some very valuable cleanup skills on how to clean up motion blur from that show, because it was like 2 months of that. But again, yeah.
Coming back to like junior to senior thing, like there's all sorts of ways you could have fixed that, right, Tony? Like you could have projected, and then you could have like there's all sorts of, or you could have hand painted. So it's
you throw everything at it.
Exactly. And maybe a junior would just pick the first hand painted one because they know they can brute force it. But actually you can, I think the senior in that case would go, okay, could I do little clean plates of frames and then project them all on a card or something, and then have the camera or just fake it, even just transform, move it. And then you could use that setup again on other shots in that sequence. And that's maybe where a leads thinking comes in, of like, okay, can we template this? So I think it's just, it's basically like the number of tools you have you can bring to a problem is generally the difference between a junior and a senior. And the lead works out if their tools can be used by other people. Sorry, Tony.
The prep stuff, all this number 3 here, all that stuff you're talking about. I've always thought about this when I was like starting out, and how there was always like how to do one technique or how to do this one thing. Yeah. And I sort of wanted to do it at some point to see if I could like bring something to the table, but I never got around to it. I probably won't. But I always wanted to see like, here's all because they're very similar approaches. Like, okay, how do you prep out something in the background? You can use a still frame, you can paint it, you could clone it, you can transform something over, you can retime it. I mean, there's all these like, but there's only like so many categories of stuff, and then all the complex stuff are just like elaborating that idea out. Like, okay, instead of tracking it, you use smart vectors, or instead of doing retime, you do a morph dissolve or something. So the fundamentals are always like the same. But I don't think I ever remember seeing a tutorial where somebody kind of went through the thinking process of like, oh, well, you could try this. Let's try it. Or let's try this approach. Let's try this approach. And then naturally you'll find out that, okay, this approach works here, but it doesn't work there. Then we need to use this approach. But you'll start to think in these ways of just trying different things out. And once you know them, you kind of golden.
But it's kind of thinking like seeing it from a kind of a higher view, right? So actually in regards to that, the actual things that if you weren't thinking about nuking in any bit of software, it would be making a patch, whatever way you make a patch, and moving that patch. However you move in the patch and getting the correct motion blur, however you get the correct motion blur. And then within each of those sections, generally the more experience you've got and the more stuff you've seen like that, the more ways you could do that. So if the first one doesn't work, you can keep kind of concertinaing down. And generally what you want to do as a comper is kind of start from the quickest and then work down to the slowest, because then it's like you don't start by rotoing something, you actually start keying it, and then the areas you can't key, then you try and move other techniques, and then you know that roto is your brute force. And I guess it's that way of thinking of, you're thinking about a problem in regards to, I need to make a patch, I don't know how, and I need to transform it, I don't know how. And then you kind of like put all of the techniques within that.
Yeah, it's exactly. And you'd be surprised at how quickly you can test things out.
Mhm.
Like you don't have to make it look final. You could within 10 minutes figure out if the thing is going to eventually work or not. And then
Yeah.
you can say, well, that's never going to work. Okay, let's on to the next one. Okay, there's some promise here. On to the third one. Oh, this it doesn't look good yet, but you can clearly see this is the route to go. Then you choose that path and you follow it through. But maybe if you didn't know that technique, you just stick with number one, and then you're just sitting there for hours,
And that, in
wasting
my
your time.
opinion, is it makes a bad comper. Like the one that picks the first one that comes into their head, doesn't test anything else, and then they're like hacking it together, right, to make it work. Like they're just hacking it to make it work. And actually, if you just kind of done it this one way at the beginning, and when I teach compositing to people, I always like to say, kind of, imagine you're a builder, but you're just not very good and you're really dumb. What would you do? Well, you try all your tools out, right? And you wouldn't know what would hit the nail in the wall the best. So try everything out. And the nice thing about Nuke is you've got a Control Z. Like you don't have to do it. Like it's such a no-brainer, right? It's such a no-brainer. It's like my keying stuff. I have all my keying techniques and I plug in the plate and then I just compare and see which ones give me the best results. I'm not looking at the plate going, oh yeah, that's definitely going to be a key light. And like, who knows? Like just try it. There's nothing to lose by trying everything out.
Yeah, it's a great point. But I would try to, if you're doing a series with is what you looks like you're gonna do, I would definitely try to approach it that way. And like, yeah, let's pick some difficult thing to remove or to add or whatever, and then let's just try some let's see what sticks on the wall, and then maybe elaborate.
Yeah, I might go to you guys as far as advising. I of course I always get the backlash from friends of mine that are like VFX supervisors. They're like, stop doing these crazy VFX shots and do simple stuff, And it's but at the same time, there's part of me that thinks if we're gonna present something to get somebody to a mid-level, stuff like this is Blade Runner 2049, where they actually physically shot footage in New Mexico or Mexico City. And then they comped in, partial CG. They filmed it on overcast, and they took, different areas, like just taking something that's already been done with artists that have already worked on it and have them chime in on the progression of a shot, but making sure it's not too difficult, but at the same time not too simple.
I would say mid-levels probably works on these shots. So that's the thing as well. Like it depends mid-level at what company and in what industry as well, right? Like that's a whole different conversation as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And even between different companies, mid-level means a whole different thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I mean, like I was thinking about maybe something like where, and of course I know I've got a Houdini background too, so just simple buildings and you were mentioning this was a lot of exponential glow or something, or
Exponential glow.
Exponential glows.
Multiply it with a ton of smoke on cards coming out of Scala and Render Node.
Yep.
You'll be halfway there.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I mean, even stuff like
I mean, there's way more to it than that, but
Yeah.
it's part of it.
Some elements and stuff, yeah.
Does
The
does this woman look a little bit blurry to you or something? Or like she doesn't look like this ballerina? I don't know. It sticks out like a sore thumb. This shot. I don't know what it is, but I mean, it looks like it's well done.
hologram or something.
Yeah. I think this was. I forgot who worked on this.
That's called creative license, man.
Okay.
I was going to say, like, when it gets to the high level stuff, that's probably because the director asked for it. It's not because they forgot it.
Yeah, usually they go in strange directions sometimes. But yeah, I learned something when I was actually in uni, and it was that something about aerial shots. They're deceivingly easy. I know that maybe I shouldn't say that, like, but they're like,
yeah,
you see them a lot because there's a lot of like, okay, you go to the stock footage website and you pick like the first aerial footage, but I tend to think that it doesn't display the most compositing skills. Like it's much harder to add something CG into a live action plate, like somebody picking up an object or something like that's really hard to do. Well, you can like kind of make an aerial shot. First of all, aerial shots just look good just by themselves. They look good like from the plate. And so when you add something in, it's like, okay, this still looks good. So they can be kind of deceiving, which is good for a reel, but it maybe doesn't necessarily show the best skills.
The problem with an aerial shot, though, the tricky thing about an aerial shot is getting people to look where you want them to look, right? Like if you were going to balance and get people to like tell a story with an aerial shot, if you want people to look somewhere, it can be a little trickier, right? Because and you don't want to just vignette the shot. So I guess that would be the challenge. Like maybe I think in compositing wise, yeah, but creatively maybe it looks nice, but actually getting someone to look exactly where you want is maybe a bit trickier.
If you replace enough, and if you do enough to it, I mean, obviously, if you made a Blade Runner scene, you'd be completely replacing it. But then at the same time, if you completely replace the plate, then it's almost like there's no point because you just made a whole 3D scene. So
yeah.
and
you get the camera motion. That's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, we were discussing like this was a shot that you worked on, Tony. Which you know what? If you open up Netflix and you click on Outlaw Kings, this is the exact footage that comes up every time. Like if you, it's funny because like I'm like, there's Tony shot again because you know if you just because I actually decided to watch a little bit of it, but you were describing that this shot actually had a port over here.
Yeah, there was like a shoreline that you could see with modern a modern port that they wanted to remove. So it's on the right side, it's just a like empty ocean, but there was like kind of a shoreline there, and the shot's really long. It's like I don't know, it's like 1,000 frames long or something, and he bobs up and down. And the shore goes through his hair. If you play it, you'll see because it's super long.
Yeah.
So the guy's like talking to him, but so it just passes into his hair back and forth. So it was really I wouldn't say that was like the most complicated thing ever. It was just really tedious, but yeah.
So because of the bobbing up and down, you had to literally recreate the hairs as opposed to find a key at a static motion behind him.
I imagine Tony got Roto. Didn't you get Roto, Tony?
Not for the hair, no.
You didn't get Roto for the hair?
No.
Oh my God, you had to track his earlobe and do it. Well, how did you do it?
It was like just a small patch, like, but it was constantly moving through. So it would be a lot of like, okay, I gotta like still frame this thing, or
could you do a difference key, like patch the background and do a difference key, or
yeah. And then honestly, there was just a lot of like painting individual frames of like, I was like, okay, this looks correct because his hair is blowing in the wind a little bit, so you just have to pick you try to do the most procedural thing first, and then you just fill in, you keep filling in all the parts where it breaks, basically.
By the way, a shot like that, if he was already over like a brighter sky and they wanted to make the sky darker, a really good trick is to kind of gain down the sky so it's a value of as close to 1 as you can get, and then clamp it and then multiply that with your background, because then wherever your value is 1, the background, your new background is going to stay the same, and wherever's less than 1, it's going to get darker, so you end up getting all your nice fine hair details. So in that case, it can be quite good, but in this case, when you've got an environment back there and it's not a constant color, it can be really tricky.
And that's, I mean, the things you're describing, I've never seen on a tutorial, so that's why I kind of brought it up. Like, this is something that we could bring in at a moderate level.
That's what I was saying to you earlier. Like, if you understand the basic math of what happens in a grade node and multiply, then you can kind of like, if you divide something by itself, it equals 1, and all of that kind of, like, we use those tricks all the time. Like if you multiply something by 1, it stays the same, and if it's less, it gets darker. Just understanding that, you can do so much with that kind of just basic fundamental. And if I'm honest with you, I don't think you can teach that in a tutorial. What's going to happen is one day it's going to click in your head and you're going to kind of have this epiphany. And you're going to just watch a bunch of tutorials and people explaining the same thing in different ways, and eventually something will click. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Obviously, you can speed that process up, I think, but
yeah, Matt, I didn't know if you had the footage that you sent us, if you wanted to look at that. Yeah, maybe it's a good, maybe we can throw out some ideas.
Yeah, so this is just, this is Evan, and again, special thanks to everybody that donated to Evan. We had like 6 people donate. Again, my motivation for doing this is to help others. So Evan's just a college kid helping out. So if you guys can make a donation to his, buy him a coffee, that'll make me happy because I can see that he's happy, and we can have a great time. So again, it's all about helping everybody. But Evan will be like the concentration as far as the stand-in, also the cameraman. He's helping out. But we'll be shooting around West Lafayette area. These are just ideas. I can go out and shoot more plates. This street, Main Street, is really cool at night. There's like nobody out there, but it has a real weird old school Blade Runner 1982 feel, so I was thinking about some retro based compositing or something. But anyway, here's some stuff. Tony and I have been discussing the idea of doing a color correction thing, simple things like adding a poster and color correcting, or interactive lighting, or vectors or something. So I'll let you guys watch this, and
I bet I remove that reflection on the window. That would be my one.
Yeah.
Remove the reflection, huh?
Yeah, of the guy on the door as he goes in. That is like a great one. I mean, if you look at the Ex Machina breakdowns, that stuff's nuts.
Yeah, add some items into that antique shop and put the reflection back on top of it.
Yeah.
That would be a typical thing that you'd see.
Really? Oh my god.
Yeah, replace the text on the glass while adding the reflection back on top of that kind of thing.
Does Copycat have a option for that, or?
Oh yeah. Watch Josh's tutorial. I'll show you.
Yeah, I was telling Matt, I keep getting emails from these people thinking I'm this like genius in machine learning. It was all fake. Please don't, like, it's not. It's I feel a bit guilty now as well, because if you search copycat on YouTube, it comes up as like second, and it's like, oh, it's not real. But I think, by the way, like there's so much you could do with that. With that first one. And I would actually say, I wouldn't Blade Run it up too much, because the problem is if you Blade Run it up, you haven't proved that you can match to a plate. So I don't know if I'd Blade Run this up. I would just throw like a ton of, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you do in the plate, right? Like you can do all sorts of interesting things.
There's different categories of VFX shots, right? I mean, there's different things you can do, but the typical two categories that I can think of is invisible effects, and then like your epic shots, or your grandiose thing, or adding a character, like a character focused, like a CG character or something, or environment set extension. I guess there's a few different types of things, but you might want to like separate it out into like, okay, this is going to be an invisible effects shot, and then all you really have to do is think like a client, like you're working for Coca-Cola, and you're like, hey, let's make instead of Main Street Mercantile, let's make it some storyline title of, Antique Shop from Hell or something, and you sort of like, you think of like, oh, we didn't want that COVID notice or something on that door, so let's remove that. It's like typical things that studio would say.
The flare at the beginning. Remove the flare at the beginning. That's a good one. I had to do that frame by frame on Exodus as he pulls the sword out of the water. And it was hand painting frame by frame the sword. Yeah, remove that. That's another classic one. And like the dirt, for instance, like the wall on the right there, you can see there's kind of like some grey patches where the paint doesn't look very good. So like fix that up, and now you've got the shadow over it. So you could use transform masked, or you could prep it and use a curve tool to get the light. I mean, there's also, or like you could dirty up the window a little bit. Like maybe this is going to look like a really old antique shop, right? So they want the window to look dirtier. That could be another interesting one. So you remove there's all sorts of stuff that you could do with this.
Could you go to the beginning of the shot? You could even like, I mean, you could even like you could make it like a time period piece and be like, okay, now it's in the 70s, and you like replace the whole street in the back there. I don't know if his attire is.
Give Evan an afro, or.
Actually, when I was at Blue Bolt, they do a lot of period dramas, and a lot of the time it was kind of like painting out the yellow lines on the road, and like there was plugs in places. I mean, it depends if this isn't to help a junior get to a mid-level, by the way. This would be more a prep, but but the thing is, you could throw. I mean, I don't know what a mid-level task would be. Like maybe use a card with the ray render to get the reflection or something of something else. Or
we did take HDRI of this shot here, so we do have the HDRI on the day. For it, I just figured that might be something that might be included. I mean, that's great ideas, guys. Thanks. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. This specific reel has to do with the moderate stuff that I was talking with Tony, color correction, putting a poster in the background with different black levels from a flare in the shot or something. This, I think we've already kind of covered this territory with your tutorial, Tony.
I would say this is too easy, by the way, as a plate.
Yeah, I wish I got plates that look like this.
Yeah, if I see a shot like this in a student row, it doesn't tell me they can key.
Really? Okay, so throw a bunch of like carpets on the wall, or
like they barely put up a green screen.
Yeah.
They just threw it up. It's like
it's too easy, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I really like this one. I really think you should do something with this one.
Well, I thought of you with the whole Outlaw Kings, where it cuts off at the end at the top here with the black and the bright, So I figured
Oh, to like move him down and recreate his. Oh yeah, that was that's the type of key you would get at the end there.
yeah,
Yeah,
It's
hats
like
over
it's
the
like oh, it
stuff.
works a little bit, and then he goes off of it.
and then we added this little thing here that was part of the outfit that goes between the green and the. I don't know. That's just thought we'd throw some. This is the most ridiculous outfit. This is.
I love it. I think you should like smart vector some attire from the Patriot or something on there, and make him straight up out of I don't know, some time period piece. It would be great.
Well,
Keep
he
his
also
hat.
has a lot of acne, just a little bit. And these are one of the other things I thought we were talking about with Xavier about how people were on pimple duty on the Harry Potter movies, and possibly doing some of the video stuff, just training on that. And again, this is just me running around Purdue with Evan filming stuff, and this is all raw, so I can bring this down if I need to.
Remove the mask on this one. There you go. That's a challenge. Remove the mask. Done.
Remove the mask from all shots.
Yeah, it's got to look like the Superman from D-Neg stuff, and you're done.
Wait, so you think we could do that?
No, please
No?
don't do that. That would be
Keen Tools?
That would
No.
be Roto animed, and it'd be a CG bottom of the face or
Oh,
something.
Yeah,
okay.
you're a senior artist if you can successfully make this guy's face
Okay.
look
Or you're
real.
very good with.
I don't like the
deepfakes.
COVID look. Remove the COVID look.
Yeah. There was,
So-
I think it was it's like Sony or Digital Domain released a video recently, and they did a bunch of this stuff, like mask testing stuff. It was super interesting.
So I thought of this shot when you sent it. The first thing I thought of was, what the company would probably tell me to do is remove that pillar that gets in the way of him. And that would be like a really complicated prep. But that's the
Or this
so
one.
if they said
No, that
remove both of those pillars and make them end at the bottom section there. That would be something typical that you would see, and it's very difficult, obviously, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And it tests your lighting because it's going in and out of all the lighting, and it tests your ability to recreate him in some way. And so if you could invisible effect that would be incredibly. If I saw somebody with a reel that was like, oh, a wipe, and there was a giant thing that went in front of the guy as he's walking down the stairs, I would be really impressed. I
Where
think.
would the
Yeah, 'cause you've
data
got
come
enough
from the
freeways.
occlusion though? Like if we don't have the data
Well,
like right
before and
here.
after. So you've got this frame. You'd basically just patch. So you'd frame hold here, and then frame hold his ear
Oh,
as
okay.
close as you can to that stuff.
Yeah,
and
you'd
then make
rebuild
full
it.
patch.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've actually
And then when
done
they-
I've actually done those reconstructions recently on a undisclosed Netflix show right now, and man, it was crazy. And
Mhm.
I was like just praying, like, please don't deny this. But they were like, yeah, it looks great. So
I still remember the most soul-destroying point in the industry so far was when I did some roto for something very early on, and it was like the most complex roto. It was a guy spinning with fire behind him and long hair. And I finished it. It took me 2 weeks, and then a week later they omitted it from the film, and it wasn't in. And I was like, So I think you got to do that, Matt. If you want the proper industry feel, when they've finished this and they've sent it to you, you got to be like, now add them back or
Yeah.
make them smaller, or it's
And when I started at Luma on my very first show, which was True Grit. I don't know if you remember that movie. It's Coen Brothers movie.
it was a good movie.
It was a good movie. There's a scene where Jeff Bridges is walking down the stairs, and they used actual film cameras, but there was some like serious artifact problems where basically if the film was pointing towards a bright light, it would like reflect. It would invert or mirror rather the whatever was bright, and just put a lens flare that was the shape of this thing. So if you had a window, it would like invert the window and like put it on top of some lens thing. So they had this thing going as there was a window, and he was walking down the stairs, and he's like checking his watch or something. I forget what he was exactly doing. And there's this giant lens flare or like unnatural looking flare over his body. And it was like I was like 2 months into the industry or something, and I had to reconstruct this guy's body as he walked down the stairs. I had to remove the flare. So it was like just complete remove. It was a complete rebuild. But like that, I mean, I was expected to do that as a junior, or as a roto prep guy, not even junior comp. It was just roto prep. So that was like one of the first tasks I had. So I don't think it's unexpected for somebody to know how to do that. So
that is more prep though, I'd say, not junior. I mean, it depends again, like what you're working on, but yeah, in film and high-end TV, I'd say that's more prep than junior comp.
Also, shout out to Garrett. I'm working with one of your old colleagues from Luma Pictures in LA currently. So he was like, "Hey, Tony, I know him," and it was funny because we were talking via because he's showing me stuff, helping me, mentoring me, and he goes, "Yeah, I saw Tony's latest keying video. I think I need to sharpen up my skills. I'm gonna watch that."
Nice.
It's like
Cool.
it's been a
Shout out to
while,
him.
So yeah, it's been a blast kind of working. It's weird how small this industry is. It's like everybody knows everybody, but.
Everyone, I mean, Tony got me the job at Trickster. I said like, "Hey, do you guys need people?" And it was like, "Yeah, we do." And then I got an interview. That's how the whole, like, for the past 3 years, it's just been people just like saying, "Hey, are you free?" or me kind of wanting to work somewhere.
Where were you before Trickster? I'm trying to remember now because you
NPC advertising, and then I worked for Important Looking Pirates back there on Lovecraft Country. So yeah, that was really good actually. They just want a BS for that, which is pretty cool. So some brutal. Have you seen the stuff we were doing? It's like the most gruesome stuff I've ever worked on.
Oh,
It was like
stuff.
a girl's head bursting through a guy. I was telling Tony this like 3,000 frame shot I did. It was nuts. It was 3,000 frame shot.
It looks great. It looks really good. It's
Yeah,
really
I've seen some shots of it. It's
disturbing.
pretty crazy.
Yeah. When your reference is just surgery videos, that's when you know you're working on something that's messed up.
Yeah. And something like this, I would either remove the text or make it different or something like that. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about interactive lighting and vectors or smart vectors, where you were talking about find something with interactive lighting. So I thought
Smart vectors
that's a good case.
Smart vectors is going to be tricky it's not got much to go on. Maybe that's kind of when you just run it through and hope. This kind of shot with a t-shirt.
There's
Yeah,
so much a high pass filter
break it up.
can do.
You can do that with Smart Vector. You just have to break it up into different keyframes and make it transition from one to the other, I think.
With a deep. It's something that'd be cool with comp is make it look like someone's behind that curtain as if they're silhouetted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would be a really interesting one. Like that's a kind of a comp job as opposed to a prep job.
Yeah, when we were filming this, security like jumped on us, and then we finally got a lanyard, and they were like, "Go ahead and film whatever you want, do whatever you want." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Next time, get permission. This was a giant ballroom at the main hall there, and they just had this suitcase sitting there. So we thought, well, it's just whatever.
Great shot.
Can
this
you
is a
put
really cool shot. You
a
can do
CG element in here, and you have the hand crossing and all that,
Reminds me of the Fantastic Beasts. When he's got that suitcase he carries with him everywhere.
Yeah, we're like, just open it up, Evan. I just like, we'll see what happens. But again, these are just ideas. I am, this would be more for the moderate stuff that Tony, you and I were discussing possibly doing one shot from or something. But as far as like in the future, you're seeing the landscape that I'm at, where I can film at, and get an idea.
What was it shot on? Out of interest, what was it shot on?
The Blackmagic Pocket 4K. Now, they do have a Red Dragon at the school, which I'm trying to get access to as a student. And obviously, I'm not making any money off on any of this, so it's free, and I'm not having any, issues with the school, So as long as everything's free, everything's fine.
I wouldn't worry. I honestly wouldn't. I don't know what Tony thinks, but I don't think that you need tutorial footage that's shot on an Alexa or on a particular camera.
Yeah.
I think as long as they're raw EXRs that are kind of in the correct color space, because that's another thing actually. Please make sure you're telling people what color space these should be in Nuke, because the amount of times I see people have it wrong and then they're matching to a bit of footage that is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important one as well. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is pretty much it. We've been, but one of the things, this last shot, this is actually out of focus, unfortunately. It's a little soft on him, but I thought, like, there's this light here. What if you were to put a poster here, and then the blacks match would make sense, maybe?
Oh, I thought you meant remove the light. I'd be like, oh, that'd be pretty difficult.
But I mean, if you put a poster right here, behind it, kind of pointless, you would have this flare coming in. It would kind of show off the use of your blacks match tool.
I think it's a bit too simple personally,
Too simple?
because it's a still frame and the light never changes.
Okay.
Yeah, when the shot of him walking down the stairs or him running down the set would be really good for matching stuff.
Personally, if I see a still frame, like a still camera shot in someone's reel, it's a bit, I don't know. There's all sorts of hacks you can do to kind of get away with stuff with a still camera that you can't do with a moving camera.
Yeah.
Sorry,
you could bring it into Photoshop and like make the frame look real good, and then
exactly. You just paint out one frame and then you're done, right? Like there's a whole different. That's very different to a. It's not cheating, but you're never going to get that in the industry really, like a dead still camera. Very rarely.
Cool. Well, I mean, with that said, should we have anything you guys would like to discuss besides that? I'm trying to think of. I know I want to discuss the fact that I've heard through the grapevine that an interesting fact that composite or certain studios will actually avoid hiring juniors because they know a junior is going to jump. Instead of moving up, they want to move over so their salary increases or doubles. What's your guys' opinion of that? Like,
it can be tough. It can be tough for smaller studios to support juniors. On one hand, they can train them in hope that they stay. In another hand, they could potentially see it as that they're going to move on. The junior might move on, and so you train them and then they move on, so that maybe they don't get their money's worth out of it. So I think it depends on the studios. The bigger studios that tend to have like programs where they're expecting you to train you, but then you stay there for a long time and until you're ready. But I mean, it's a smart decision for a junior to move on to get more money somewhere else and move up and become a mid somewhere. So that's very intelligent, and I think studios kind of understand that too. So there is some sort of balance there, probably.
Yeah, maybe. So I think it's also because I was a junior at NPC and then I moved to DNEG to kind of be a mid, and part of the reason why I wanted to do that as well is the fact that you can just learn different processes, like learning how a different company it's kind of come back to that whole you just want as many tools as you can per problem. If you stay at one company, what I find is it's not that you couldn't there's some amazing comps that have just stayed at one company. Don't get me wrong, but actually you can learn from all these other companies and actually go, oh, actually, you know what? At DNEG, they did this particular thing and it worked way better. And again, as I was saying earlier, you can then make a decision based on what you think will work better as opposed to I've always done it this way. I think, and one other thing I'd say is if a company is thinking like they don't want to train a junior because they're going to leave, then I'd argue that actually maybe that's a case where the company, they're asking the wrong question. They're maybe saying, what are we doing wrong to not make out what's making the juniors jump? Is it because we're not moving them from a junior to a mid-level quick enough when actually they are? Or is it because we're not paying them the market rate that they can get elsewhere? Because I've been at companies before where they basically won't move people from Roto Prep into comp, but then they'll hire junior compers and train them on the pipeline. And it's like, why didn't you just move? And it costs them more money in the long run, if I'm honest with you. It's kind of nuts. It's this short-term thinking. So I think actually if a company, and I understand why they're thinking that, because it does happen, don't get me wrong, but maybe they're asking the wrong question of, rather than, oh, we're not going to do it, why are those juniors jumping and what could we do about it? Because especially at the moment with the amount of VFX work, I was at a company once who basically wanted me to make them training because they wanted to flood the market with VFX artists because they were pissed off that good senior compers or artists in any industry could just jump around this particular country and kind of charge what they want because they knew there was a shortage, right? It's a supply and demand issue. So they wanted to pump up the supply, which would then decrease the demand, and then they could kind of push their rates down. So that's kind of what they want. I completely disagreed with it and I said no, by the way. I was like, so, but it's kind of it's just tricky. I think that potentially you could make it a more compelling argument and a reason to stay at a company, offer something different. Maybe that's thing too. And because there's that shortage, if you do invest in your talent, then you're going to be in a way better place, right? Because actually you've invested in your talent. I think that's something they miss a lot. The industry is too much operating on the fact that everyone jumps around everywhere, and that's what they go on.
Yeah.
They kind of, now not every company, but I think Trickster are a company where it's just a great working environment. But actually if the vibe is great, then you know what, I don't mind that so much. And if I get on with a supervisor and I know they've got my back, I don't mind that so much. So I feel like actually companies kind of miss a trick there, that if they make the environment more compelling and more interesting and more fun to work on and maybe a great place to work, maybe they're not going to have these people leave and
yeah. I think also, I mean, they're kind of missing an opportunity. I think that the whole point of training a junior is that you're training them you're training them not only for your pipeline in the way that I guess your company likes to work, but you kind of have an eye on them. And so you're teaching them what mistakes to look out for. Because basically, if you're a junior at another company and then you switch, you don't know what the other company taught them. You don't know if they like taught them the wrong thing, and they're still like not checking their grain, and they're not doing pre-mults and stuff. You have no idea. So that's the kind of the nice part about training someone, is because first of all, you're training them to work with your team. They know your tools. They get along with the team and the supervisor and everything. And so that's the kind of the benefit of it. And I mean, from the HR point of view, not that they cap them in the price, but obviously it's a lot harder to jump. They don't want to. Well, basically, you can't get like a 25% increase on your paycheck or something. It's like if you start going by percentages, that nobody wants to give you a 50% pay increase. So, but the new company doesn't mind paying that, because like on paper it doesn't look bad. It's just, I'm just hiring somebody for this price. Yeah, but on paper it always looks bad. Oh, he got 150% increase in his salary. So, and I can understand how that looks like weird. But that's why people tend to jump around a lot, I think.
But this is also why like the VFX supervisors at most places are the ones who have been there for 15, 20 years, because they know everyone. And they have been trained up just on that pipeline. Like I remember actually I was talking to someone at Framestore. I think it was one of the recruiters or head of kind of like training and things. And they've got this apprenticeship now. And we were talking and they were saying, we think we could maybe get someone into a lead position in kind of 6-7 years. Now, obviously people might be a bit cynical and think, okay, they're just trying. But actually, if you've trained someone just on your pipeline and the exact correct way that you do things from the very start, like you could do that. Because a lot of supervising at a place is really understanding the pipeline and really knowing the people, the CG supervisor, and you're friends with them, so you can get little kind of like mates deals between you and kind of help each other out a bit. So I think when I give talks at uni, basically the two things I say are there's two options. You either jump between company every time you want to go from junior, mid to senior to lead, and you get your rate up, but then you're going to hit a cap, because what happens is you have to stick around at a company for a while before they give you the more kind of managerial roles. And that's how then you have to wait and get your rate up. Or you can stay at one company and they'll just kind of, your rate will be very slow at the beginning, but then eventually what's going to happen is you're going to end up in the VFX suite roles and your rate kind of goes a bit nuts. So that the cap is kind of higher, and eventually you're going to have to stay at a company for a while. It just so happens that those are the kind of two like strategies I see. And obviously you can stay at one company longer because you enjoy it and things, but those are generally the two strategies. Another one is the fact that you like move to an upcoming hub. Like people are moving to Australia because, wow, they need more VFX supervisors that are there locally. So if you move, you might be a lead somewhere else, and then they'll make you a lead VFX suit because they really want you to, they need people there. So that's another, like people did that to Canada a lot. Those are all the strategies basically you can use. Or you move to a smaller company as well. So if you work on bigger stuff, you work to a smaller one, they generally make you a lead if you're a senior before. And now you, like that was another one I saw as well, people do all the time. You become a VFX soup at a smaller shop, and now you're a VFX soup technically on paper, and I mean you are, and then you go work at the bigger places of VFX soup. So you have to hop in order to kind of, basically no one wants to take a risk on you. And that's the reason juniors don't get hired, because no one take a risk on them. It's the reason that no one wants to make you go from Roto Prep to a junior comp, because they don't want to take a risk on you. It's the reason they don't really want to promote you to a lead or a sequencer, because they don't want to take a risk on you. That's literally it. You've got to be the safest bet in the world. And the safest bet in the world looks like you've worked on the biggest stuff at the best companies. That's literally it. They don't want to take a risk on you.
I do remember there was always the problem with when they used to do Roto Prep in at companies. Usually now they're outsourcing it to different places. But when they did, they would always have the conundrum where basically you'd move up the ranks of Roto Prep and you'd be like the best Roto Prep person
like
there.
Supervisor or lead Roto Prep or something.
Yeah, you'd be like the lead Roto Prep person. And then, so if you were to transition to comp, they would essentially lose their best RotoPaint person. So like they're like really hesitant. They're like, oh, you're really good at what you do. And, we don't.
There's plenty of junior. There's plenty of compers they could hire.
Right. So it's like a replacement issue. So that then they would need to like start from the bottom again and train someone up to be a lead in Roto. So there's benefits obviously to this. So you leave and go become junior comp somewhere else, for example. But I mean, maybe that's not a problem anymore because the industry has changed so much of of like junior comps being hired. I mean, Josh, I'd like to ask you that question. Like, 'cause, I think you started a little bit later than I did. So, I mean, I had the whole roto prep experience and I did the whole thing for like 2 years. And then I moved on and became junior comp somewhere at the commercials place. And then I was junior comp for a little bit. And then I got into films and then I learned a bit more skills and then I went back to commercials and et cetera. But did you go through the roto prep phase or how did you start?
Yeah, I had roto prep. So I got lucky. I was saying to Matt earlier, like I did the Comp Academy in London at the time, which is like the first one, is way different from it now. Like now they're putting 40, 50 people on it. It was 2 positions every 6 months or a year. And you did 6 months roto, 6 months prep, and then 6 months in comp. So I did 6 months roto on Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, so straight out of uni, I managed to get a position. So I was straight in NPC, 6 months roto, and then 6 months prep on Guardians of the Galaxy as well, and a few other shows, and then straight into comp after a year at NPC. And the thing there is they literally, like if you've proved you can do junior shots, then they start giving you mid and senior because now they make way more money on the shots, right? And I think the nicest thing there, the advantage I had is the fact that I knew I was going to go into comp. So what happened is not only is that a morale booster, but actually I could be studying from like I used to come in 30 minutes early and look through all of the Nuke scripts because you can just find the coolest shots and work out how they've done them. And then I was just learning. So by the time I got into the comp, because I knew exactly the date, I mean, it was a bit squiff, but the rough date, it meant that, okay, I can plan for exactly this so I can hit the ground running, right? The minute I get in, which I guess if you're in a roto prep department, and you are having to go through those stages and then you have to become a lead, it's very tricky because you don't know when you're going to become a comper. And actually you want to focus on the roto prep stuff because that's your career keeping you employed. But then you've got to also learn the comp stuff as well, right, outside. So I had a bit of an advantage there, if I'm honest with you. So yeah, that's how I go. But one thing I'd say is now, like I teach one-on-one with people, I try, my goal is to get them straight in as a junior comp. And the biggest chances on a TV show, because all the roto prep's getting outsourced now, and there's so much TV work. I mean, again, it's tricky at the moment with remote, but it's so much TV work that you can go straight in as a junior comper, and that happens a lot. And when even NPC Academy is hiring. Like I've just got 2 students who are being flown to Montreal to go. Like in COVID time, they're flying people to Montreal to train them. Right now, NPC. So it's
and I'm guessing like everybody, they got to quarantine for 2 weeks. But of course, are they working remotely yet there, or?
I would imagine so.
Okay.
You, as a junior, you're trying to learn techniques. So the only way you're going to learn techniques is to look around you and see what other people are doing, and to really like open it. If you're confused about something, it's a great opportunity. You can say, "Hey, I really liked your shot. I noticed like you did this thing. I didn't quite understand it. Could you mind?" And people love to. I think people love to explain stuff. Oh yeah, that's cool that you looked at that stuff. Let me show you this quick thing, and it can be like 5-10 minutes that they'd spend to show you that thing, and then you get some benefit out of it, and you actually look. It's not embarrassing. Like you shouldn't never be embarrassed about it because you're showing to people that you care. It's like if I were to hear like somebody, oh, I opened your shot and I didn't understand this thing, I'd be like, oh wow, this person's really trying to move ahead and he's trying to like actually learn some stuff. So it's a really positive thing, I think.
It's that second bit actually that's more important. Like, if I'm honest with you, it's not just about trying hard. It's about other people in your company knowing you're trying hard as well, right? Like, actually, you want to be doing that. If you're just looking at the scripts, you're going to get very good, but no one knows you're getting very good. So it's, again, you've got to make it seem like you're the safest bet in the world, right? Like, how could you do that? Well, you could be going up and looking at people's scripts and talking to them and asking them why they did this. And it's just, I think that's kind of it, really.
And there, I mean, Tony, my phone is like, usage, you can't see it now, it says usage. That's basically the download for my website. They're downloading your keying thing like crazy right now, and they're learning from something. I don't know if you would call it mid-level, but that's something that they have, and that's something that I would like to build in a progressive iteration workflow, so that, say, I hand this to somebody and say, put your piece of the puzzle in at the professional level that you would. So it's like a comp that's being built with multiple authors progressively down the line, maybe.
Yeah. That tutorial that you did, or that we did, like to provide the footage and the script is like really important, I think. And then so thank you for doing that. Thank you for like putting it out there for people to download for free, because you always see the same footage over and over again. You see the girl with the veil.
Yeah, Hollywood green
The girl
screens.
with the blue, Hollywood, free Hollywood footage. I used that 12 years ago or whatever it was, like when I was in school. Like, there's a lack of footage. There's a lack of material. And the Blender, of course, the Blender one that everybody uses, the Tears of Steel stuff. I mean, but that was filmed in 2008 or 6 or something. I mean, it's just a lack of stuff.
A tip for that is go on the something I do with my as fellows, but go on the Red forums, and people post their footage for free.
Ooh,
if you go on the
I'm gonna write that down.
Red's camera forums, people post all their test stuff, and then you've just got a load of Red footage for free, and then you just email them and ask them. And I mean, another thing as well is like just go on Kickstarter, just say I really like your film, can I work on it for free? You get decent footage then, and client. It's that's
and for people like me and Hugo, I had a discussion with him stating we'll never get more than 50,000 subscribers. He would disagree, but because there's only 50,000 Nuke users.
Yeah, it's a small industry.
It's very small.
We're not going to make any money. You know, it's not like we're making money off this or something, but I want to help the industry, but the goal I think is to, just like you guys were saying, get a mid-level comp established that they could look at that is a relatively difficult shot that has the combination of all the elements that would help you become a mid-level. I think that's the very least we could do, you know.
I would say though that it's looking at a Nuke script, it's not a mid-level comp. It would be a shot that a mid-level comper would be given. Like a senior comper would have made the same script probably, just maybe would be a little bit quick. So that at that level, it's very tricky, if I'm honest with you, because again, a junior at one place is different to a junior at somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so tricky, and that's why it's so difficult, because their starting knowledge is in completely different places.
Yeah, I completely agree with Josh. I mean, the only thing I can distinguish, like with certainty, I think it's my opinion, I guess, but is that between Roto Prep and Junior Comp is Roto Prep people, they don't do CG or green screens. Yeah. So the only thing that makes you a comper is that you can do green screens in CG. So if you're not so you could be, but not all shots have green screen or CG. So you might have an incredibly difficult paint shot, but like only a mid or senior or I guess like the highest level of Roto Prep person could do, if that makes any sense. But I just know that there's a distinction there. It is, as Josh said, really hard to distinguish. Like I think as you get into more senior stuff, it's I think it's a lot more to do with look development and creativity. Yeah. I think because a junior will typically be following in the footsteps of somebody that's a mid or somebody that's a senior, which means that you need the original person to set the look and to figure out the problems ahead of time and usually maybe set up a template or something like that. But somebody has to be the person that does that initial step. And that person is usually the lead, the soup, the senior, whatever you want to call it. And then they're trickling down. And so the mid will probably be somebody, if it's really complicated, but they can still follow a template, still understand stuff. And then a junior would be somebody that's like, okay, maybe it's a shorter shot, maybe it's a little less relevant in the sequence, but somebody still needs to do it. It's like, okay, well, they can learn some stuff and they can be doing this thing. So it's sort of this like hierarchy of somebody setting the look of something and coming up with the difficult creativity and the problem solving bit of it, and then other people kind of following in those footsteps.
Yeah, but that's not to say a senior comper wouldn't do mid shots. That's the thing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. If you don't mind, we could just kind of end cap this with some of the questions posted.
Yeah, of course.
Manoj,
wait, has this gone out live then the whole time? I didn't know that. I thought it was recorded. Amazing.
Manoj Manoharan, Mad Looks VFX. He's always on here asking good questions. Hey, Tony and Josh, so what, according to you, does a senior Roto paint artist should learn when he is promoted as a compositor? I guess most of the basics like tracking Roto, paint, touch-up, color grading are familiar to prep artists. Other than that?
Yeah, it would just the CG and green screen, basically.
Yeah. Definitely. And actually, one thing I would say is subjective stuff. Something that Roto prep people, like when they move to comp, struggle with is the fact that a marker is either removed or it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in comp, when someone's asking you, oh, actually, like we talk about balance all the time of like balancing a shot. And that's all about kind of getting someone to look where you want them to look in a shot. And actually, I find it so interesting. So when I teach people about balancing in a shot, they always find it really weird because they think compositing is just matching to the plate. And it is that to a certain extent, but you've also got to design a nice looking image. And it's just so interesting. Like people completely underestimate the making a nice looking image part of being a compositor.
Yeah, Josh is 100% right. It's like, because exactly like what you said, roto prep is like, does it look good or not? Like, can you notice the thing that needs to be removed or not? Or does the roto look good or not? Yeah, I will just add upon that to say, like, during the first, like your junior years and mid-level years, even senior, that you're going to think that you're like the worst person at.
Oh yeah, I still have days like that, man.
Dude, you will never trust yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Like I do it all the time. This looks like shit. Like, what am I doing? Like, nobody's going to like this. And at some point you, like, as you progress in your career, you're only basically relying on the times before where people have said that it did look good, and you can at least count them on one or two hands and be like, well, I guess I'm not that bad because somebody liked it in the past. But in the beginning, you have no idea and you have no confidence. And actually, I would say that if you are a junior person and you do have all the confidence in the world, then maybe you should lower the confidence level because maybe your stuff doesn't look as good as you think it does. But like, there's a balance.
Less willing to help you out as well. If you come at it too cocky and you think you know everything, then I find that people like that just won't ever learn anything new because they already think they know everything to learn.
It's a natural feeling though, so don't be scared of that. And it's good that you're scared that it doesn't look good because it means that you're truly trying to make it look good, and then you're open to the feedback. So being, in one hand, you should like embrace the feeling, and on the other hand, don't be too scared about it.
Lonely CGI. Where can I find free or cheap materials to practice on taking footage from films or commercials?
Don't do that. Don't take footage from films and commercials. That'd be my first step.
I guess if you're gonna practice on it, maybe. I mean, if you're not gonna show it to anybody, I suppose you could try.
But you haven't got the raw image files then, right? Like you haven't got the
raw,
very true, compressed and stuff. So I would honestly just like, if you want to match black level, if you want to learn how to grade and comp something into a shot, just take something like I did. Sorry, it's for the self-promotion, but I did this thing with the Foundry where I go through the whole process of matching CG into a plate. And that's what I do. I make people do that 20 of those a day and for a week. And they get very good. And look, just go online, find loads of different images that haven't been graded at all, and just try and match something in the same thing into every single image. And you get very good very quickly. But again, that doesn't sell a tutorial, right? Because it's just a case of downloading a still image of CG and matching it to a load of images. And I'd argue that's one of the most important skills. It's just doing that. So I would honestly just do that first. And then if you need footage, then, I mean, Tiz are still as good for green screen stuff. There's a ton of shots there. Sorry, Tony.
Yeah. No. Like, I remember one of the tests that we used to have in university was they would make an image. Like, so they would have a final image and they would give you the elements that made up that image. And every element would have some sort of complicated transformation or scale or whatever. And it would have always a color correction or some merge operator. And they would just say, okay, you have like 2 hours, 3 hours, recreate this image. And so they give you like, so you have the background, the foreground, like a bunch of elements, like maybe typically like 4 or 5 elements, and everything would be changed. And so they would just say, try to match this as best you can and do it in like 2 hours or 1 hour or something. And it would teach you like really basic things, as Josh was saying. It would teach you color correction. It would teach you matching stuff to a reference. So okay, then you're figuring out, oh, do I have to corner pin this? What's the easiest? What did they do to try to get this? I always thought that was kind of useful to do that kind of stuff.
And being able to grade something to play is the only thing that really matters at the end of the day, like being able to comp something, like match something in. Because it doesn't matter whether you use smart vectors or you can track it in. If it doesn't look like it's sat in, then you failed as a comper. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you've used like the Nuke's 3D system and you made this amazing particle setup. Okay, but does it look right in the plate? And all of that stuff is just going to be down to a few grade notes and looking for the same thing every time. So, and people just forget about it.
I remember at Luma they had I don't know if this is good to say, but they had us matching LUTs because I guess there was some problem where the LUTs weren't applied or they weren't provided, and I guess they decided it was like a good task for the Roto prep team. So I remember for like months and months in the beginning, it was like right at the beginning, also on True Grit, it was like right at the beginning of my career. They would basically, we'd have the plate with like the no CDL, no LUT or anything, and then we'd have this QuickTime and we'd bring in this edit reference, and we would just try to grade it. I mean, you can't really do it the fully 100% in Nuke, but you can get like 95% there, providing that there's not like little mats and little things around that they're doing custom. But sometimes you can even figure that out if you they did some ramp here. But I remember that was like the most challenging thing, and I learned so much. Like I would always have to do per channel grading, and because you're matching these complicated LUTs, and it was really. I mean, I'm so glad that they made us do it, but at the time it was like so tedious, and it was like, oh, why are we doing this? It's crazy. But
I've been doing that actually recently for the stuff where I have to look at, I'll be given a sequence of 5 or 6 shots, and then the shot's not over with. There's 4 more shots, and some other artist has them, and I would contact them and say, hey, we got to work together, and then match the color from their reference, whoever gets the shot done first. I mean, I'm learning this stuff that you guys were always talking about. You should learn. You know what I mean? But thankfully it's in production. So,
but Matt, what I would say is, like, in that case, I would go into the Nuke script that the client's approved and grab everything. Like, that's one thing that junior artists don't do enough. Just go in and grab everything. Like, don't try and do it from scratch. Like,
totally.
That's one thing. It's just nuts when you see someone, like, the shot has been approved, the CG looks the same in that shot, and they're there bringing in the shot and then trying to match it. Like, why are you trying to guess what they've done? You can see their workings out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
whenever that happens, I literally tell the other artists, hey, here's the new script with all the color corrections. Exactly. Just copy paste it over, and usually it's sort of a race who gets there first, so to speak. But again, it's just it's an interesting world, television. For myself, we've got some pretty crazy deadlines, and I've been up till 2 or 3 in the morning. So it's just, I'm starting to understand everything you guys are saying all this time. So.
Yeah, I quite liked working in commercials. It teaches you how to be fast and how to think outside the box. Because it can be very structured in films and very like, oh, we can't do that because the plate is sacred and touched, by the holiest of holy people. It's like, so I remember in commercials, it was just like, oh, we have a problem on screen left. Oh, can we just like, I transformed the ramp and scale it up, just warp it over. It was like, oh yeah, we could do that. Oh, this person's too big. Okay, just scale them down or something. It was crazy the stuff that we were doing, but it was great.
They're like, but the director didn't ask for it. We don't care. We're moving it.
Yeah, it was great. Because it used to be kind of fun because you were like, oh, how can I just hack the hell out of this thing?
So my time in ads was I went there after being a senior. And it was really weird because you're using the same software, but you're using it for stuff you've never had to do in it before. It was such a weird feeling. It was like, I think I've released it on my site. Like there's a Nuke particle confetti sim I had to do for this Nikon. And they just went, right, we've run out of money for effects. It's like, okay, let's see what I can come up in an hour and try. It's really fun. Ads for just thinking on the spot and having to be on your toes constantly.
I agree. It keeps you on your toes, and it's like really fast, and like you get to be creative and stuff. I kind of like it.
Yeah, we're moving lightning fast, and we've got like I don't know how many. We got like a bajillion a bajillion shows coming up this summer, and thankfully I'm off from college because my teachers are like, "You only did 3 shots," and I'm like, "I'm working on Netflix shows." And she's like,
that's going to count for something, surely.
And I'm just like, balancing everything's a bit nuts. So we got Shemai El Bebli. I'm junior compositor. How can I work with VFX filmmakers? I'm assuming they're not meaning me, but like visual effects filmmakers. I don't understand that.
I mean, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, just find stuff that's that you like, and then email the directors.
Yeah.
That's literally the best way.
You know, this is the part of the discussion I wanted to discuss, but I'm afraid to discuss because I think it might upset people.
Oh no.
Yeah, here we go. But the idea that you as a compositor, the amount of years of experience that you guys have, and you're being bombarded not only as a teacher, but by all these people that want to break into the industry, and they might have the ambition, but they don't have the talent, and they're asking you stupid questions. I'm not saying that's a stupid question, by the way, but I mean, like, and you're just like, for me, that used to come off as arrogant, but actually, it's just you dealing with people that just don't know and dealing with it over and over and over and over again, where it kind of gives you that jadedness. So I'm always wondering, like, is that why compositors are kind of like very whatever-ish, because they keep hearing the same repeat of people asking dumb questions, or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess you notice people, I guess, not learning certain things, and I think people are kind of trying to figure out where the source of the problem is, or like why don't they know how to unpremult or premult, or why don't they know how to color correct? And so you're almost like disappointed that there's some way that they learned how to do it, that like somebody didn't bring up this like really important thing. But no, I'm not sure other than that.
I'm always trying to catch myself. Am I coming off as like an arrogant jerk on this show, you know, when somebody asks a simple question, you know? And it's,
I think it depends. I mean, I don't, like, the thing is about you and Tony, I think are in very different positions, because you guys have got bigger YouTube channels than me. I think this is why I quite like if you don't self-promote too much, then it's quite nice, because what happens is you get like the keenest people find you. And actually, generally, I'd say, like, when I go to universities, actually, when you say, oh, by the way, guys, here's my email address, if you guys want to get in contact, you get like one email from probably the best. And there's actually a really good correlation of the person that's going to be the best in third year at comping and the person that emailed me in first year. It's nuts. And I know that I wouldn't say it if I knew 60 people were going to email me and I was going to have to answer them all. It's just because it's a time thing, right? But I know that I can say that, and 2 of them are going to email me and it's going to be fine. It's... I mean, you get that issue sometimes, and I think we've all started somewhere, right? So you have to remember that I don't really have an issue with people emailing me.
I think you have to cater your questions. Like, before you ask a question, just Google it first.
Yeah.
If you don't get if the answer's not on page 1, then you can ask the question.
Yeah.
Or if someone who's starting out is asking you some sort of super complex question about deep on something, and it's like, no, actually, like, you don't need to know that just yet.
Yeah. Well, it's different at a company. At a company, you can ask anybody anything, because it's usually going to take like 2 minutes to explain something. You generally speaking, you don't want to ask it like 5 times, like day after day. You want to ask it like at most twice. But like, as far as like emailing people or something, like, you don't ask them about, I don't know, just simple things that, like, it would take us longer to write a response than it would for you. The amount of time you spent asking the question to us, you could have found the answer on Google. Or in some cases. So I would say just try that.
It's the same we were saying about earlier, right? When we were saying, look at people's scripts and then ask those people questions. If you look at their script and go up to the person and go, why did you use the unpre-multiply node after the C? Like, do you see what I mean? Like, they're going to get a negative view of you then. Whereas if you ask them more complex questions, they're going to... So I think it's that as well. Like, be aware that actually you are building a network when you email these people. And there's a kind of, we're not here like judging, but it's a case of you get an idea of where someone's kind of, how good someone is at comping based on the questions they're asking. And actually you want to give off the effect that, okay, look, I kind of know my stuff. I couldn't find this online. How do I do this? And like, I think everyone's kind of happy to answer those questions.
Yeah, I think you're right. Totally right about that. It
gives a great impression as well.
Well, thanks for coming on. I think we've probably established a lot of good information that you shared, and I appreciate it because it'll help guide me to what to do next. It'll be a slow-moving road, obviously, over the summer for all this to come together. But again, thanks for your collaboration and for your feedback. I know you guys are really busy working on big movies. So is there anything you guys want to share before we leave? Or
I want to say a couple things. So I just updated the Nuke Survival Toolkit to version 2.00. So if anybody wants to, it's Nuke 13 ready. I'm making a current update right now 2.1. So I updated some more tools, and I'm currently adding some tools in there. But it's not documented. But the release is not there. But you can just download from the master if you want the very latest thing. So I'm just letting people know I'll try to release something in the next week or something. I'm just documenting stuff, so it takes a little bit of time. And the second thing is that I'm going to be working soon on a CG compositing series similar to the King series that I did. So I just wanted to put it out there. So, and it's going to be some free material in renders and everything. So be on the lookout for that.
And Josh, you have on your website, you have sort of like a newsletter, don't you? Am I wrong on that? Or?
Yeah. So I run a newsletter which I kick out every month. It's got over 2,000 comps now. It's kind of getting bigger than it started like 7-8 years ago. And then every month people kind of email me who are kind of on there, and they email me with any resources they've made or any tools or anything like that. And then every month I just kick it out, and it's kind of just, the reason I made it is because when I got into the industry, I was really annoyed because via email, everyone was sending each other cool stuff. And when you're outside the industry, you're maybe not finding that stuff, right? And it really annoyed me. It's like, was I not aware of this? So this is basically about kind of just, hey, look, here was some cool stuff I was sent while I was kind of working, or something I found useful. So let's kick it out to everyone. So yeah, it's been really nice actually. And it's just such a great way to kind of meet other people, and it's just a nice way to share. So something else if you guys are starting out, I made a website with some friends called Nuke compositingtutorials.com. And it's basically, we got fed up of like rubbish free tutorials on YouTube, and people didn't know where to start basically.
What was it called? Nuke?
Nuke compositingtutorials.com. So this is basically run by me and a few, it should be.
Tutorials, plural.
Yeah, tutorials.
Just one.
There's multiple ones on that. That should work. So basically, if you head to Nuke Compositor, it's there you go. So it's run by me and a few friends in the industry, and we kind of got fed up of the fact that there's maybe some stuff on YouTube, and as a beginner, you don't know what's true or wrong, right? So everyone's kind of worked at top end places, and we basically just curate the stuff we find for free. Now, if you don't find anything on there, it doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong. It's just the fact that we didn't watch it, or we weren't aware of it. But everything on there, we've kind of just watched and gone, actually, you know what? That is the correct way to do things. Like that is a legit way of doing things. So it's just, if you're starting out, it's very hard to know what's true and false. So that's why we made this basically. So it's all free. Every tutorial on there is just a free one. And it's just, and then we've kind of tried to tag it so that if you wanted to, for instance, like learn about a particular thing, then you can just click on the series at the side and it will take you there. There's a ton of, if you click the key, it's basically just Tony.
And I watched your color matching, which doesn't use the black and white. It uses the gain and the gamma, and I was like blown away by that. So if you guys check out, it's like the tree monster video. I think it's free, right? Yeah.
It's all free. Yeah, again, that was something I did with the Foundry, and it's just a still image of them. It's a practice I kind of made as I was teaching people one-on-one, and it's that thing I said I get them to do 20 of those a day for a week to 2 weeks. And it's just, you get that CG monster, there's a still image, there's AOVs in there if you want to play around with them. And then the series is kind of like 35 to 40 minutes long. And it just says how to match it into a background. And what we do is I basically have like a mountain range. So the back mountains are completely different contrast ratio than the front ones. And then you have the same CG monster in each. And we go, okay, look, how are we going to layer this into these different things? And if you follow that, I would personally suggest like just watch that if you're starting out. And then I would just practice comping it into loads of different images. Find like, again, I do 10 or 20 a day and just practice doing that. That will get you way further than most things. And then also, it doesn't matter if you use After Effects or any other bit of software comes along. You've just trained your eye then, and it's exactly the same in everything. So yeah, hopefully that's useful for you guys. It's for free on Compositing Pro, the website we're on.
Cool. Well, thanks again, gentlemen, and we'll see you hopefully in the future for future fun.
Cool.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for having us on, dude. And thanks for kicking out all this awesome stuff.